everybody, and welcome back to the Damage Report Big JR Wednesday or Impeachment Wednesday. You decide.
Hey, I'll take Impeachment Wednesday if that's what we get out of the whole thing. I feel like this happens a lot on Wednesdays. Do they schedule it for the middle of the week? Or is this because the hearings run all week and then,
No, I mean, a couple times starts on Wednesdays. I think they just want to make sure that you get to give your 2 cents.
Come on. All the members of the House First Intelligence Committee wanted me to speak on it, and now the Judiciary Committee also want me to speak on it. Thank you, guys.
There you go. Now, we've got a lot that we're going to be talking about today. Obviously, we're going to be going over some of the initial results from the hearing today, both the gigantic 300-page written report and then some of the video too. But later on, we have a candidate who's going to be joining us. Donald Trump mocked on the world stage by world leaders, and more on the climate crisis. Those solar panel tariffs from a couple years ago that, look, I predicted that it would be bad. Was I right? Was I wrong? We'll find out later on the show today. And Devin Nunes has a new hobby. We'll let you know what it is at the end of the day. But why don't we start off with the big news of the morning involving those hearings. In advance of the big hearings this morning, a massive novel-length report was put out about the impeachment proceedings, the evidence that had been gathered, all of that. And so we want to give you just a few little excerpts from that report. This is a pretty important section. The impeachment inquiry has found that President Trump personally and acting through agents within and outside of the US government solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, to benefit his re-election. Just a reminder for all the people who might say, this whole thing is complicated, I can't really follow it. Well, that's pretty short. I think that's tweetable, actually. Why don't we test it? Why don't you tweet that, actually?
And also, and by the way, also a small other caveat, I promise I won't filibuster this because there's a lot to get to. But to benefit his re-election. When would his re-election be? In 2020. So every time they keep saying, oh, you guys getting caught up in 2016, this is about 2016, this is about 2020, and it happened this year. Continue.
Well, and also the argument that, well, you can't impeach a president in the last year, which smacks of Merrick Garland. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that. And if the crime is related to the re-election effort, I think the impeachment effort gets to be as well. I think that's a fair bounce. But anyway, more from the report. The impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump, the 45th president of the United States, uncovering a months-long effort by President Trump to use the powers of his office to solicit foreign interference on his behalf in the 2020 election. It also asserts that Mr. Trump's scheme subverted US foreign policy towards Ukraine and undermined our national security in favor of 2 politically motivated investigations that would help his presidential re-election campaign. The report also lays out what it calls an unprecedented campaign of obstruction of this impeachment inquiry by Mr. Trump, a campaign of obstruction that continues up until right now. And again, reminders that they wanted the investigations to be announced. The CNN interview where the Ukrainian president was going to announce it had already been scheduled. It was only called off because this entire thing was revealed. The aid had been held. Ukraine's government knew about it. They had meetings about how exactly they were going to work through this really incredibly difficult political situation. So all of the obfuscations that Jim Jordan and others are going to try to use that, well, you have to have these 37 requirements before it can become an impeachable offense. They got them. They got all of them. They don't have to have them, but they got them. Okay, so that's some of what comes out of the report. If you'd like to read the entire thing, take a week off and you can work your way through it. But it is pretty clear about what is known about the Ukraine scandal, what was revealed during both the closed door hearings and once they became very public, there was cross-examination and all of that.
And again, this is backed up by all of the evidence, all the witnesses that were first off with the private depositions and then things that happened in public. So again, all the things that Republicans, pundits to representatives to senators all called for, they did. And also, in asking for the president, his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and everyone else to come and testify or speak it on their behalf or say what they need to say to refute it, none of that was carried out by any of them. So then when he's asked, how come you're not at one of his chopper talks, how come you're not coming out and actually participating in it since you said this is all, you haven't had a chance to, it's just a sham, I don't want to. So that's your choice, bro.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into the obstruction of justice thing, but like there's a lot of different ways that you can attempt to obstruct justice. Blocking documents from being released, which they've done, that's one way. Blocking witnesses who have information that's needed, that's another way, and they've done that. But then also like publicly attacking the entire process as a sham and a witch hunt that you're not gonna participate in, it becomes, I think, harder to imply that you're not obstructing justice when you're literally calling the entire constitutional endeavor illegitimate and you say you're not going to participate in it, I think that that's a strong foundation on which you can build an obstruction of justice case.
Yes.
Okay, now let's move to today's actual hearings. Today, a number of different witnesses were called, both by the Democrats, also by the Republicans. And there's just a few excerpts we want you to see. There's a good chance you've been watching some of this, but let's go first to Professor Noah Feldman, who had this to say about what Donald Trump did.
President Trump's conduct, as described in the testimony and evidence, clearly constitutes impeachable high crimes and misdemeanors under the Constitution. In particular, the memorandum and other testimony relating to the July 25th, 2019 phone call between the two presidents, President Trump and President Zelensky, more than sufficiently indicates that President Trump abused his office by soliciting the president of Ukraine to investigate his political rivals in order to gain personal political advantage, including in relation to the 2020 election. Again, the words abuse of office are not mystical or magical. They are very clear. The abuse of office occurs when the president uses a feature of his power, the awesome power of his office, not to serve the interests of the American public, but to serve his personal, individual, partisan, electoral interests.
And that's the thing where, like there could be scandals that are too complicated or arcane or technical for most people to follow. But the idea that this guy is using the office of the president to benefit himself, not us, not the country, not even like his party or whatever, which wouldn't be acceptable, but even just himself, I think that people can get this. I think that's one of the reasons that support for impeachment rose so quickly in the initial weeks of this thing. It's not complicated, and we knew who he was. Remember earlier this year, there was like a week of controversy around an interview that Donald Trump had in the Oval Office. I think it might have been with Axios. No, it was with the guy with the complicated name, Stephanopoulos.
Oh.
Stephanopoulos was like, so what would happen if someone had dirt? Would you take that? He's like, I might take it. It would depend. Remember that whole thing where he was laying out exactly what he was in the process of doing at that time in hindsight? And now we're supposed to be like mystified, like, well, would he really do something like that during election? He said he was gonna do it.
Even the far-reaching argument that says we have to look into his mind and see where his approach was to these things. He told us where his mind was in that interview. His approach to these things. He did it during 2016. He called for China to make sure you investigate. Hey, I would love to see that from you. Hey, Russia, can you do this for me? He says it openly. So we find where his mind is, even though we don't even have to. We see the evidence of what he did and what others saw him do and witnessed him do.
Yeah, exactly. And Mick Mulvaney admitted it on TV. And like 1 week into the Ukraine scandal, Donald Trump in Chopper Talk was like, you know what? I think Ukraine should investigate Joe Biden. And I think China should do it too. How many times do you have to confess to a crime on TV and have all of your underlings confessing to the crime on TV before it starts to stick in some fashion?
And there's one more thing on that. The last thing that Noah Feldman was saying was a chance with what Trump was doing in this whole phone call and this pressure campaign. It was a chance to benefit himself in his re-election campaign. Now, when you have the rest of these senators and congressmen on the Republican side backing him, there's a reason why they do it, because that also gives them electoral opportunities. So they got opportunities when it comes to like political appointments. They push through their tax breaks, which is all them do. Cabinet positions. Then that leads to maybe speaking fees after you're out of office. Book deals. All these things help benefit the people that are supporting him. So it's not just him. It's not like he's some rogue president, which he is, but some rogue president is doing this on his own. But when you have this much backing, they're doing it for their own benefit as well.
Yeah.
It's all political games.
And we talked about the fact that he's going around raising money for senators who are going to be sitting in judgment of him once this impeachment inquiry gets to the Senate. I mean, look, that is totally legal. You're allowed to do that. Seems corrupt, maybe we should change those laws. But as of right now, he's allowed to do it. But we're allowed to look at some of those senators and say, well, if the guy just raised $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 for your reelection, are you really unbiased when it comes to judging whether he committed an impeachable offense? Now, Noah Feldman had one other comment I wanted to read. I don't think it's possible to emphasize this strongly enough. A president who will not cooperate with an impeachment inquiry is putting himself above the law. Now, putting yourself above the law as president is the core of an impeachable offense. And you can listen to Noah Feldman on that. You can go back to the late 90s and listen to Lindsey Graham when he said that exact thing. That's an impeachable offense. And so Trump is right now looking at potentially 3 impeachable offenses. Bribery, which is I think the only specific crime listed under the impeachment clause of the Constitution, abuse of power, which is very clear, it underlies this entire thing, and obstruction of justice, which is not only well established, but ongoing. And by the way, like, I don't think we need to be diplomatic to the Republicans, but we let him get away with the first 10 counts of obstruction of justice free. We just gave that to him as like a present. And he squandered that. You got all that obstruction, but you just wanted more. And so that's all there. Now, by the way, in that whole report, if you read it, this is not like they're not voting immediately on impeachment. It's going to have to go to the House Judiciary Committee. They're going to be going over all this. So this is just another step in the process. There are more. What's interesting is that the Democrats have said they're going to do this relatively fast. And they're being attacked on that. We're gonna have a witness a little bit later on who's saying, no, it's too fast. I would like you to ponder, what if they dragged it out for a year? Would the Republicans like that if it was long? It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. If the main concern is that this is going to affect the election, then shouldn't you get it done fast? And then why did you wait so long into his term? Okay, well, if we had done it right after he became elected, would that have been acceptable? Like, this is purely hypothetical that the Ukraine thing hadn't even happened, but there is no time where it's acceptable, in the same way that there's no time where you get to talk about gun control. You're always too close to some shooting.
Yeah, whenever you don't have a leg to stand on and your principles don't match up with anything that has to do with normal process of government, you have to come up with side notes and distractions to try and push people away from what's actually happening. So yeah, whatever narrative, they'll mold their narrative to whatever situation it fits. That's what happens to people that don't have any principles.
Yeah. There's another video I want to go to. They're very interesting. So the whole Ukraine thing, what Donald Trump was holding back and what he wanted to get, I think very understandable. But if you'd like an easier to understand version of this, consider this bit of video from Pamela Karlan, one of the law professor witnesses in today's hearing.
What happened in 2016 was bad enough. There is widespread agreement that Russian operatives intervened to manipulate our political process. But that distortion is magnified if a sitting president abuses the powers of his office actually to invite foreign intervention. To see why, imagine living in a part of Louisiana or Texas that's prone to devastating hurricanes and flooding. What would you think if you lived there and your governor asked for a meeting with the president to discuss getting disaster aid that Congress has provided for? What would you think if that president said, I would like you to do us a favor. I'll meet with you and I'll send the disaster relief once you brand my opponent a criminal? Wouldn't you know in your gut that such a president had abused his office, that he betrayed the national interest, and that he was trying to corrupt the electoral process?
That's devastating. Obviously, no, we wouldn't accept it. Now, I know some Republicans are gonna come back with a really disingenuous response and say, well, the federal government, they negotiate with the state governments all the time where they'll offer aid, but only under certain conditions. Before you see that, before Ben Shapiro goes on some head-shaking rant about that, that again are the interests of governments, not of one man. And the example's very clear. I want you to do me a favor, okay? Has nothing to do with the people, the federal government, our diplomatic objectives. It has to do with one man's personal political goals.
Absolutely, and you can deny that all you want, but it's just not the case. There was a side note, I was listening to CNN's analysis of this, and this has been an ongoing thing. It's not just CNN, it's just I heard it this morning, so that's where the example came from. But we have a Harvard law professor, we have a Stanford law professor, both we just heard from speaking about this in very explicit and obvious terms. And I hate the narrative that keeps coming that says, well, Democrats have the problem of making sure that the American people didn't really understand all this lawyer speak, all this attorney speak, all these smart guys in academia speak about the law. This is pretty straightforward. I don't think I'm this highly overly intelligent person that gets something about the law, because when I read a legal document, I get confused. So I get it, but this is straightforward. Stop telling politicians, stop telling the American public that they're too dumb to get this.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen to these 5 hours. This is what they say. There's 5 hours of testimony, man. This is really some deep stuff, man. It's kind of dry today. No, it's not. Yeah. This is direct. This is easy. Like they give you layman's term examples. Like when she's talking about if you have disaster relief and you live in Louisiana. That's straightforward. People don't not understand that. Stop telling us that we're dumb.
Yeah, and the really confusing thing is, if you check in on his Republican defenders in government, but especially in the media, like a Sean Hannity show, you will be blasted in the brain with two I think, contradictory narratives. One of which is Donald Trump would never push for another country to investigate the Bidens, and he definitely shouldn't be impeached for obstruction of justice. And then like 10 minutes later, it's they should definitely be investigating the Bidens. They're totally corrupt. They should be investigating them. And Donald Trump should not participate in this impeachment inquiry in any way. He should block all the documents. He should block all the witnesses. So he's not doing this, and I want him to do this.
Yeah.
Like it's not even a thing where we refuse to admit it happened. We're lobbying for it in real time while denying that it matters or that there should be any consequences. Now, one other thing though. I want to give you a bit of the video from one of the Republican witnesses today. So this is Jonathan Turley, who spoke today, but unfortunately for him, he also spoke back in the 90s. And so we're gonna show you both of those things. So first of all, here is a section from his closing remarks today that's been making the rounds on social media.
I get it. You're mad. The president's mad. My Republican friends are mad. My Democratic friends are mad. My wife is mad. My kids are mad. Even my dog seems mad. And Luna is a golden doodle and they don't get mad. So we're all mad. Where is that taking us? Will a slipshod impeachment make us less mad? Will it only invite an invitation for the madness to follow every future administration? That is why this is wrong.
So now you're gonna see that section and Sean Hannity's gonna love it. He also goes on to say all the things that Trump did wrong. So he acknowledges that Trump did a lot of really inappropriate wrong stuff. But again, facts don't care about your feelings. We have a guy who just talks about how mad his golden doodle is and how everybody's just, oh, you're just doing this because you're mad. Let's ignore all of the testimony, all of the witnesses, all the call records, all the transcripts, all of that. You're just doing it because you're mad. You can't impeach a guy based off of that. So I'm gonna have what he said about a different case of impeachment, but first I wanted to give you a chance to respond.
Again, if you got law professors, you got guys coming in to speak in the legal basis for this, and your defense is you guys are mad. That's all you got.
Yeah.
No, that's a childlike defense. Give me some facts, give me something that has some kind of precedence or something that has to do with our Constitution and in our way of what we propose to be in this country, the way to defend this.
Yeah, so Jonathan Turley responds to the evidence showing that the president took aid, hundreds of millions of dollars that our ally needed, that we had allocated to them, and decided, I'm not gonna give that to you until you help me defeat my 2020 opponent. So that's not good enough. But what was good enough to impeach a president? Well, Professor Turley, in a statement written November 9th, 1998, declared that impeaching President Bill Clinton was necessary to literally protect the, quote, existence of the government and to prevent, quote, contempt for law and anarchy. That if we did not impeach Bill Clinton, a guy who they were saying lied about having an affair and obstructed justice in lying to hide an affair he had, Donald Trump, we didn't barely need to hide those anymore. We know about all of them. There would be anarchy in the streets of the United States if we didn't impeach Bill Clinton over those lies. Now, Bill Clinton did lie, and arguably that is obstruction of justice. You can make that case, but he said there could be riots in the streets. He goes on to say this, to some extent, I believe this is mostly him summarizing Louis Brandeis, but just bear in mind, this is Jonathan Turley back during the Clinton years. In a government of laws, existence of the government will be imperiled if it fails to observe the law scrupulously. Our government is the potent, the omnipresent teacher. For good or for ill, it teaches the whole people by its example. Crime is contagious. If the government becomes a lawbreaker, it breeds contempt for law. It invites every man to become a law unto himself. It invites anarchy. And so you have to get this man out of the Oval Office because he lied about the sex he was having. This whole thing where we hold hundreds of millions of dollars that are potentially stopping Ukraine from being overrun by partisans supported by Russia, and he did that so that he could take out Joe Biden, that's fine, I'm not worried about that.
It's one of those quotes where you can take to one of these supporters of the president and then say it and say, Adam Schiff said this. Oh, and they will say, oh, that's BS, that's crazy. Adam Schiff, Shifty Schiff, that's nonsense. Anarchy, get out of here. And then reveal to them that this guy who's defending your president.
Exactly, exactly. I bring this up because it's interesting and there are still some people out there that care about consistency and hypocrisy, but in general, it's not gonna hurt him. He's probably gonna be just fine. Although he does have to return to his home where apparently everybody's mad at him and even his dog doesn't like him. So anyway, we are gonna take a break. We come back, Candace's gonna be joining us on the other side.
That 300 million is a pretty good number, we were doing a press release on it, and I got all worked up. And I said, okay, well, that's the size of the US population. You know what our next target is? The size of the entire world on the road to 6 billion. Although by the time we hit it, it'll probably be 7, maybe 8 billion.
Not a big deal. A couple of days ago on the TYT network, we passed 1 billion views.
What the hell?
What the hell?
That's a big freaking deal.
2 billion views.
What now?
Sorry.
What did we do? 2 billion?
2 billion.
They said it couldn't be done, but it was done.
We just crossed 5 billion views on YouTube.
I mean, imagine 10 years ago thinking one day.
We looked at you like, are you nuts? Young Turks crosses 6 billion views.
Young Turks has just passed another milestone, 10 billion views.
Damn.
When you choose aspiration, you can also trust that your hard-earned money is deposited into a financial firm with a conscience. You're sending a message for change and saving yourself more than a couple bucks along the way. With the Aspiration Spend and Save account, you'll get 5 free ATM withdrawals each month with no monthly fees. Aspiration also commits to donating 10% of every dollar of its earnings to charitable microloans for low-income Americans. And as a thank you, when you sign up with Aspiration, we'll give you a free month of TYT membership. Win-win. Head to aspiration.com/TYT to sign up now.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
Are you a politician with a ridiculous point to make? Are you in need of a petulant, outdated way to make it? Then you'll need one of my signs. Hi, I'm Simon Simonson of Simonson Signs. We'll take the stupid, over-the-top, meaningless allegory you have and put it on foam core. So maybe someone will notice your grandstanding, because this is C-SPAN. And anything that's not people milling around in front of a running vote count is almost considered moderately entertaining. The bar is low, just like our prices. We've got plenty of designs. We also brought you Mike Lee's Tauntauns. They're tons of fun. What does this have to do with the Green New Deal? About as much as this other visual aid he used of Reagan on a T-Rex. Or is that a Velociraptor? Who cares? Who the cares? No one gives a. Call us now at Simon Simonson Signs. We'll make your stupid point stupidly for money today.
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Joining us now is a congressional candidate running in Florida's 23rd district, Jen Perlman. Welcome to the Damage Report.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Glad to have you on. And I want to talk about your platform, and I want to start off in a different way than we normally do. Generally, we don't get into too much foreign policy with the candidates who join us on the show because honestly, they very rarely focus on foreign policy in their campaign literature or their speeches. But you are different. You actually have some pretty bold stances when it comes to foreign policy. Can you talk to us a little bit about your platform there?
I never really thought of it as being so bold. I am clearly against regime change wars. I think that most of everything I think we're doing right now is more imperialist than anything. it's been since World War II that we've had an actual legal war. I think our military budget is just ridiculous and should be cut in half. And there's just so many. But I don't know that these ideas are that bold. It just seems like common sense to me.
Well, it could be that it is bold and common sense. Bold in terms of the political likelihood. So for instance, you say we should cut the military budget by 50%. I think I've literally tweeted that exact same thing. But even if you get into Congress, you're going to find yourself surrounded by a lot of people who probably are not as progressive as you. So how do we make the case that is the direction we should move in? And I know that your platform goes beyond that, but I believe that military budget, that's a pretty important core part of it.
Yeah, I think that people are becoming more and more aware of our actual true motivation for what we do overseas and what we're doing in countries like Syria and our interest in Venezuela and Bolivia and such. And I think that people are starting to wake up. I think it's going to obviously take longer. And I think that as soon as we can get more and more non-corporatists into Congress that are representing people and not the military industrial complex, we can actually start having a normal conversation and working to come to some sort of understanding as to what our defense spending should be instead of offense spending. Mm-hmm. So I just think, I don't know that it's something that's going to happen, in one session, two sessions, three sessions, but as non-corporatists can trickle our way in, then I think we can finally get to what people are most interested in doing, which is not being in all these wars.
I hope that you're right. Now, well, I guess it's a combination, some of these of domestic and foreign policy, but you support a number of high-profile progressive policy proposals, including Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, college for all, those sorts of things. You also support some things that are not as universal across progressive candidates, including congressional term limits. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, it's funny. It is one of those strange things where I'm not, in line with the progressive caucus, but this is how I see it. I understand where they're coming from, because on the progressive side, the election is the term limit, and it should be completely up to the people to decide how long someone should be in office. And you've got lifelong civil servants like Bernie Sanders, and I respect that, and I understand that. However, we do not have an election process right now that is working functionally enough where I would feel comfortable in trusting it. For example, my congressperson has been sitting in her seat for 15 years, and it requires very little vote to stay there because we have closed primaries and a gerrymandered district.
Yes.
So if we had open primaries, she probably would have been gone years ago. So the reason I support term limits really is that I see that at this point we are in a place where people are just getting stuck and staying there. Yeah. So I mean, so I understand where the progressives are coming from, but I just think that the system is not allowing for proper elections right now.
So you mentioned your opponent, so why don't we transition to that? So Jen Perlman, you're running against the incumbent. It's a figure I had to look up because I wasn't familiar with. Most people probably aren't going to know this. Debbie, is it Wasserman Schultz? No, I'm joking. So yes, she's a very high-profile Democrat. Made a name for herself in the 2016 election, for better or for worse. So you're taking on a pretty powerful Democrat. So talk to me about how that has helped influence your campaign so far.
She has been my congresswoman, like I said, for 15 years. And, a lot has happened over 15 years, not just with her, but with a lot of representatives, wherein it's very clear that their motives are not serving the people. Their motives are either serving their donors or their own careers, quite honestly. So the choices that and it isn't just her, but I'm obviously more keenly aware of who she takes money from and what she votes on because she's my representative. Yeah. And as far as that she's powerful, yeah. I mean, at this point, it feels like to me, just we've been taken over by corporate America. And so it's powerful for all of them.
Yeah. Now, we've talked to some candidates, for instance, who are running against like a Susan Collins, who has made a couple of really high-profile votes that are definitely going to be used in campaign ads, things like that. Are there particular actions that Debbie Wasserman Schultz has taken that you're going to focus on as an example of what makes you such different candidates?
Well, I mean, my three biggest core issues are Medicare for All, Green New Deal, and criminal justice reform. So I can just go through those three alone. So Debbie does not support single payer healthcare. And she has never indicated as such, and members of our progressive caucus have actually gone to her office and met with her about this. She has no intention of signing single-payer healthcare. So in healthcare alone, that's huge. Debbie also does not support the Green New Deal. And to me, and I do not understand this for anybody in any position of leadership in this country, how you cannot get behind something that is a mission statement that isn't even specific policy, but is basically saying we have to do everything we can do to fix this. How people do not have that level of ambition is shameful. So she doesn't support that. And as far as criminal justice reform, I mean, she has supported for-profit prison industry. She takes money from companies that are affiliated and contract with private prison industry. So, this is just something that to me is unacceptable. I mean, corrections should never be for profit.
I agree. Now, if people would like to find out more about your platform, where should they head? Gen2020.com.
We're also at Gen2020 on Facebook. And please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at GenFL23. And please send some support. We definitely need money. We're up against a corporate monolith, and we need monthly donors. We're asking for $23 for District 23.
Jen Perlman, candidate for the 23rd District. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna take a short break here. When we come back, a little bit of drama on the international stage after this.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in there.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries. Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. Yeah. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Cenk Uygur joins us.
We are progressive and unapologetically so. Very happy to say that millennial and Gen Z generations are massively progressive along with us.
Democrats, they've been so weak for so long. For God's sake, fight for your side.
I would not like to compromise with Republicans. I would like to defeat them. Lynn, do you support Donald Trump?
Yes, I like Donald Trump.
Well, that's why we think you're racist. The 5 black kids in Central Park did not commit the rape. He said, who cares? Keep them in prison anyway. They probably did something.
He's a terrible guy. Very fine people on the side chanting, Jews will not replace us. He says we should ban all Muslims. Well, that's bigotry by definition. He said it during the campaign trail over and over again. Called Latinos criminals and rapists. See, you're used to Republicans being strong on television and Democrats cowering. New day in America. Progressives, we actually fight back.
In London during the NATO meeting, a number of world leaders were caught on a hot mic talking about President Trump in less than positive terms. Here's a bit of that video. So there you had Justin Trudeau, not in costume, Boris Johnson, Emmanuel Macron, and I think that was Stephen Colbert, I'm joking. But anyway, they were talking about the president and how he had, as soon as he got to the meeting, he was gonna there was a photo shoot that turned into him ranting at the cameras for 40 minutes, which set back the whole thing. Now we're gonna have Trudeau is asked about this. We've also got Trump responding on video. What'd you think?
Well, I mean, again, another instance of the world laughing at us, as we were talking about before. I think it was at G7 when they laughed before, and we know this president came forward and said, we're gonna stop being the laughing stock of the world, when in reality we've become the laughing stock of the world since he's walked in. Again, another complete opposite fact based off of exactly what he said wouldn't happen. It's not surprising anymore. We know how they feel. The only problem is that they're not allowed to say this openly.
Exactly. Now, Donald Trump was asked about this. Here's how he responded.
Video of Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night.
Well, he's two-faced.
Do you think that Germany is too naive?
And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%. And I guess he's not very happy about it. I mean, you were there, a couple of you were there, and he's not paying 2%, and he should be paying 2%. It's Canada, they have money, and they should be paying 2%. So I called him out on that, and I'm sure he wasn't happy about it, but that's the way it is.
Now, I know what you're expecting, that I'm going to eviscerate Donald Trump, and a little bit maybe, but that was actually for Trump a pretty mature response, I think.
What, the second part of the two-faced
part? He said he was two-faced. Okay, fine. But then he goes on and he talks about the policy. He didn't slam him and call him short or ugly. Which
policy? The policy of how much they're contributing
the NATO
to NATO
contributions.
But what does that have to do with the fact that he's held up the meetings and he sat there for 40 minutes and he goes off the top and makes these speeches and 3 world leaders are talking about how annoying he is? None of that has anything to do with how much Canada's paying. What about how much France? What about how much Britain is paying? Because those other 2 world leaders were in on this conversation.
They were too,
as well.
I'm just saying he didn't call him like shifty Justin. He didn't talk about the blackface incident or anything, and that's a super low bar, but Donald Trump generally trips over bars that low. Now, to the core of this, Trudeau was asked about this. He says, last night I made a reference to the fact that there was an unscheduled press conference before my meeting with President Trump, and I was happy to take part in it. But it was certainly notable, and I've had a number of good conversations with the president over the course of this day and yesterday. He adds that he had a great meeting with him. But it should be noted that Donald Trump abruptly canceled a press conference that was supposed to mark the end of the meeting and instead just left after this because maybe he didn't want to be on stage with him. And here's the thing, I don't want to read too much into this, it's not the most important thing in the world, but Donald Trump, in the same way that I was doing a live video earlier today, Rudy Giuliani, who had sort of threatened Trump with blackmail material to some extent. He says jokingly, we just found out from Vanity Fair yesterday, Trump banned him from going on Fox News anymore. He's a thin-skinned individual. That video of Trudeau and Macron and Johnson, what they were saying was not that bad.
Totally.
It was not that bad, and yet it tells him they're talking about me, they're joking about me. I'm technically in the club, but I'm not really in the club. And even though I say that I'm strong and I'm beautiful and everyone loves me, I know deep down that they don't actually love me. They're joking about me, they're laughing at me.
This goes back to the thing I was saying about the billionaires that were crying about being slammed and lambasted by people like Elizabeth Warren, and they get all mad and say, how dare you talk about us like that? If I'm the president of the United States and I'm bragging about how powerful and strong I am in the best country in the world, I could not care less about what you have to say about me, because I'm doing my job. So if I see the 3 guys are talking about how long I took in a press conference because I talked too much, I'd be like, I guess I did, huh?
Yeah, joke back.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
It means you have very low self-esteem and not much self-confidence, and you need people to support your weak mind.
And unfortunately, we know that that's true. And so I would say for the next 48 hours or so, maybe 3 days, I would be worried about what he might do, because it's gonna be gnawing at the back of his tiny little pea-sized brain, like thinking about what happened, and when the late night comics are joking about it, and when SNL's definitely gonna have Trudeau talking. So anyway, I would just be a little bit worried about how he might respond. Okay, with that, we're gonna take a short break. We come back, climate crisis after this.
People work hard for what they have, and if you want more, you gotta do it yourself.
Stock stories bring headlines to life in an instant, whether you work on Wall Street or in Wichita. Stock report cards and professional analyst buy and sell ratings help gut check your thought process. Buy stock, take profits, and manage risk. And the Idea Feed is your daily one-stop investment shop with videos that unpack today's money-moving headlines in under 3 minutes, because you need ideas, not lectures, and live in-app chat from when you want to talk to someone, but you don't actually want to talk.
So what'd you think?
With unlimited commission-free stock trades and great ideas from real traders. Visit doe.com/TYT.
People still don't know what the word feminist actually means. Not even that, people are still angered by the word.
People think feminist is a bad word, but it's not.
There are gradations, there are different waves. The people who are against gender equality love to use like militant feminists as the representatives of all feminists. It's untrue.
I don't know why you'd be threatened by strong women unless you were an incredibly weak man. If you don't have equal rights, or you're not treated the same way, well, wouldn't you be angry?
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show. No,
We'll see.
Poor Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy.
Cenk is oddly, scarily competitive.
Oh, it's insane. I play basketball against him. It's just like, how are you good at this?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Idarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby. You know, the 2 people here said that their moms were both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
The Hour of Fire is brought to you by Brooke, and Brooke.
Yes, Brooke's got it.
Okay.
Take it.
All
You
right.
guys know I really like compliments.
Charlie Turks
Charlie Turk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
All right, so that's it. We will settle it.
I want to see this.
Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't. Scandal at TYT.
You're a good boss.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip into Republicans. See, don't miss the live show. That's great. Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
There's so much going on. There's so much going on, but every day climate change is proceeding, and so let's touch base. Donald Trump has had a few attempts at the question, how seriously do you take climate change? What are you gonna do about it? We've had, the whole conversation about the Green New Deal now. Greta Thunberg is gonna be, she's all over the place. So he has had an opportunity to learn. Let's see what he does in his latest at-bat.
Honestly, climate change is very important to me, and I've done many environmental impact statements over my life, and I believe very strongly in very, very crystal clear, clean water and clean air. That's a big part of climate change.
No, nope, it's not.
It's a big part.
It's not. They're not unrelated, but it's not a big part of it. It's not like, well, if you can drink the water and it's clean, guess we don't have to worry about carbon concentrations. It's the same thing every time. We're asking you about a specific thing. Overall heating having to do with the carbon that we're emitting into the atmosphere, and he can't not talk about clean air and clean water, which by the way is a dodge because he doesn't care about those things, and his environmental policies are horrible for those as well.
Exactly. That was gonna be my point. So you're talking about you care about it, but what are you doing about it? Again, every time he says, and I've said it many, many times, that I care about clean air and clean water. What have you done about it then? Because you're the president. We know how you care about tax because you did something about that. We know how much you care about deregulating corporations because you did that as well. You do things that you care about. You don't do things that you don't care about. So again, also when he talks about the African American unemployment, which one of your policies has initiated or helped out with unemployment numbers? And also, what have you done to help with climate change since you care about it so much? Which policies? Ask him some specifics and make him go, I said it.
Yeah, look, if you please, you know what you should do? You should watch the Damage Report all the time. But if you look at our analysis of the changes they've made to the way that coal plants are regulated, that has increased certain types of emissions. We've even told you estimates of how many additional people have died each year as a result of that new pollution in the air when it comes to the water. Obama's Waters of the US rule, they revoked that, allowing more dumping of things into rivers and streams. That makes the water less clean. So even if those two things were connected, or even if we were ignoring climate change connection to air and water, which we should because they're not directly connected, you have not been doing right by the air. You certainly haven't been doing right by the water. So you're doing a dodge, which is something where you're arguably even worse than you are on climate change. But I have one more video for you, and that has to do with one of the effects of climate change, rising sea levels. So let's see what happens.
Concerned about rising sea levels at all, Shirley? I'm concerned about everything, but I'm also concerned about nuclear proliferation, which I think is a very important topic, and it's a topic that we're going to discuss today. The whole situation with nuclear to me is very, very important, as we've been discussing today at the various meetings that we've had. I think that's something that has to be taken care of, and it has to be dealt with very strongly. Okay.
You were an alien and you had been like, you tapped all of our communications and you were listening, you're like, okay, we want to learn English. Let's go to the president. They've chosen him as their leader, he's smart. So you could have listened to everything he said for the last 30 years, you'd have no idea what the word strongly means because it means everything and nothing. It doesn't mean anything. So asked about rising sea levels, a gigantic threat that's going to destroy tens, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars of real estate in the United States alone. It's gonna force the relocation of literally millions of people. Worst storms for decades leading up to it. His answer is, I'm concerned about everything. I'm also concerned about nuclear proliferation. The situation with nuclear is really bad.
Which situation? Again, what about nuclear? And then, so John, you may ask me here, so JR, you hungry? You gonna go to lunch today? Hey, is there a food truck outside? You wanna go check out the food truck? I was like, actually, I was thinking about lunch, and I'm gonna take my car down to the shop and get the oil change, because I've been needing that oil change for a while now. I care deeply about my oil change. You go, what the hell are you talking about? I was asking you about lunch.
Yeah.
Why did you pivot to oil change? You'd go, something's wrong with JR.
Yeah, and we know that for all that he says that he doesn't accept the science of climate change and he certainly doesn't care about sea level rise, we know that his actual properties are preparing for it in the US and abroad. When it comes to his money, they accept that this is happening, but really important, we don't have time. Okay, so there is also updated information on the effects that his tariffs on solar panels have had on the solar industry in the United States. I wanna give that the time that it deserves, so we'll be covering that a little bit later on. But just if you had hoped that this international conversation, generally being led by a youth movement around the world to do something about the climate crisis, might have finally gotten through to Donald Trump, it has not. And Greta Thunberg, when asked, would she meet with the president, she said that would be a waste of my time. Once again, she nailed it.
He also wouldn't understand what she's saying.
He'd have no idea. Okay, so we're gonna take a short break, come back, one more story for you.
That fat, baby, move that fat. We thugged out.
What's J&A?
Ja'Cory and Arthur.
You guys share a mug?
Yeah, you both take our hot cocoa black.
That doesn't make any sense.
Plus, I'm right-handed and Arthur's left-handed, so our lips wouldn't even touch the same area. It's perfect.
No, I'm not left-handed.
What do you mean? I've seen you type with your left hand.
Yeah, and also with my right hand. That's how typing works.
So this is what democracy looks like.
When I think back to the debates in 2016, this was a very different party that was debating.
First time in my lifetime that I've actually had progressives represent us. Here comes Bernie.
This whole debate tonight was shaped by progressives.
We have to live our values every day in a campaign.
She came with receipts. That was her strongest moment by far.
This is going to be one of the best primaries we've ever seen.
This is what we've been saying would happen, and now it's playing out on the debate stage.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats, we're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer health care, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a betting. Absolutely no.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
when I should have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Republican Representative Devin Nunes has had a pretty ridiculous couple of years. He sued an imaginary cow. He's now been drawn into the Ukraine scandal, which he was presiding over while also now being implicated in, and he didn't mention any of that. But he's decided that going forward, he's going to do the next couple of years serious. So, to that end, he is suing CNN for $435 million for defamation.
What's the plan? What's the plan here?
I think the plan is to get $435 million.
Or maybe
I think he'll do it.
$4.35 possibly.
So really fast, here's the details. He's suing over a November 22nd report that Lev Parnas, the indicted associate of Joe Biden, was prepared to tell Congress that Nunes met with Viktor Shokin, the former Ukrainian prosecutor, in Vienna last year to discuss, quote, digging up dirt on Joe Biden. Nunes denied the claims at the time, but CNN said that he did not respond to them for comment. Instead, he told Breitbart.com that the claims were demonstrably false. CNN declined to comment on the lawsuit, and when Devin Nunes went on Fox News and was asked about taking a trip out there, he dodged the question.
It was one of those answers where it's like, yeah, the truth will come out when it needs to be, or I'll talk about it when the right time comes. And also, with actually the final impeachment answer that the House Intelligence Committee came forward with, there's those call logs that Devin Nunes spoke with Parnas, as we've already mentioned. We were talking about this off air as well. So which one is it? Then he went on Hannity last night, and Hannity asked him, like, hey, these call logs say that you spoke to him. He goes, I don't know, I don't remember that guy. Hey, the call logs say you remember that guy.
You spoke to him 4 times.
How does that go with your lawsuit now?
Yeah, I cannot discount the possibility that if you're in elected office, and especially if you're an older person, your phone habits are different. But he had 4 conversations with that guy. I have had 4 telephone conversations this decade. I would remember the person that I had them with, I think. But so he's suing CNN. There's more to this, but let's focus on that for just a minute. CNN reported on what the lawyer for Lev Parnas says is true. That is not defamation, okay? This is a lawsuit that's ongoing. A lawyer has said this is their claim. CNN didn't say, oh, he definitely did it, that's what we think. They just reported a fact in an ongoing legal proceeding. There's no defamation case to be had there. And he is a congressman. He's not some rando suing people around the country. Well, he technically is because it's not his first lawsuit. But it's an obvious stunt.
Yeah, it's another deflection to make sure that people, the flashing signs of Nunes involved with it, listed on the impeachment report, and then also in connection with this. Well, everyone sees as one of the guys is being indicted on the situations that was going on in Ukraine. So he's like, man, my name keeps coming up in all these situations that I was involved in. I need to have my name come up in something where I'm on the attack.
Yes.
So that people who are dumb enough to follow me will go, oh, but Nunes is filing another lawsuit. This must be legit this time. You're only gonna not confuse. You're only going to convince people that are already on your side that this makes any sense.
Yeah, and honestly, suing for as much as he is implies, well, then they must have done something really wrong.
Where's that number come from?
Much. It's completely made up. But anyway, one other point on this, and I kind of wish now that I had pulled the video, although we don't have much time. This morning, new development in this case, at least in terms of legal analysis on Fox News. Greg Jarrett, who's like, he's paid by Fox News to do legal analysis. He says what probably happened or might have happened was that someone stole Devin Nunes' phone and used it to call Rudy Giuliani, the White House, and Lev Parnas.
You know how that goes.
We're not really legal analysts, but what do you think about that argument? Do you think that someone a year ago stole Nunes' phone, and Nunes hasn't mentioned it, to call someone that nobody knew who they were because it involves a scandal that would only develop a year later?
It doesn't even have to matter anymore. Hey, when you misplace your phone in the house, you get a little freaked out. Oh man, did I leave it in the bedroom? Oh man, is it in the kitchen? I gotta find my phone. Did I drop it outside? So if somebody steals your phone and you're a congressman who's associated with the president, all these international dealings, and your phone gets taken and phone calls are made, you don't ever mention that?
No. And when this entire thing blows up, and you don't remember that guy, remember, he told Sean Hannity, I don't remember it, you wouldn't say, hey, wait, wasn't my phone stolen for a while last year? Maybe that links up. Apparently also, by the way, Greg Jarrett, you might want to work this into your analysis. He apparently bought some tickets to go to the place he says he wasn't at. That must have also been theft and fraud, I assume. This is Fox News, it's serious, not some random place. But that's the analysis you're gonna get there. Anyway, thank you as always for joining me. Always good to have you on. Everybody, stick around tomorrow because joining me in studio, Emma Vigeland's gonna be hosting the entire show with me again, so it should be a lot of fun. Thank you for joining us today. Rate the podcast if you haven't, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.